One more point, just talk about the G20 itself. I mean, clearly, one of the vice ministers I talked to is there made it very clear that, you know, you get to the G20 meetings, you're talking about these major thematic issues, and with translations and all the rest, if you get to make one statement on a major issue, you're lucky. So clearly, everything at the G20 that's going to be agreed to needs to be basically baked in before the meetings. This isn't Bretton Woods where you have 3 weeks of folks locked away without a lot of media. This is one day, half of which is pre-planned speeches. There's not a lot of there at the G20 itself. A lot of meetings on the sidelines, very interesting, very important. G20 itself is not going to get much done, except for the fact that all of those heads of state have domestic constituencies that they need to speak for. And so the situation you end up in is that in advance of the G20, you've already gotten leaked out a slew of information about what you think is going to pass. And there's not much likelihood you get much more than that. But there's a non-negligible possibility that statements by some of the leaders to their own domestic constituencies when they do their press conferences, like we saw from Sarkozy and Merkel at the beginning of the week, can actually derail the process. That looked like a possibility the first couple of days. It got reined back in, and as a consequence, successful meeting. I firmly believe that the expansion of IMF support is significant. And I think that it will help to ensure some emerging markets over the course of the next 12, 18 months that otherwise would have fallen off a cliff have a better shot of staying emerging markets. Turkey's a big one here. Maybe Ukraine. There are a few others. I'll talk about that when we start talking about the fat tails that I'm expecting we'll see going forward. But that was a big deal. The trade credit expansion, don't know. I mean, the Japanese that I spoke with said that they did it because the Europeans asked them to, but they didn't see any point for it. The regulatory commitments made on free trade and no protectionism, the Brits said they were out there because they were asked to, but they also see that 17 of the G20 countries since December have passed about 45 protectionist measures on trade. So nice to make the commitment, but the actual facts on the ground over the next few months are going to be a little different. I think the G20 was a success in adding value to a lowest common denominator approach. I think it's a kludge, but I think it was a strong kludge, right? And it's probably the best you can hope for. What the G20 was not last week was the beginnings of the creations of new financial architecture. It was not the beginnings of coordination of global financial stimulus or regulatory policy. It was not that, it could not be that, and it will not, in my view, become that. In fact, some of the big issues that are becoming serious points of debate between, for example, the US and China over long-term how financial architecture should be run, they fundamentally don't agree on.